everyone. Marita Nakeng is my name, and you're welcome to an hour with Nangla, which is where we celebrate real African heroes and individuals, organizations working tirelessly to prevent and respond to gender-based violence. I'm so glad to have you here today and to have my colleague Bridget with us today, who will be sharing with us her journey, her work as well, um, over the years and what she's looking forward to. But before we dig really deep into the subject of today, let's get Bridget introduce herself. So over to you, Bridget, with your introduction.
Okay, thank you, Nangi. Hello everyone. My name is Bridget Masikati from Zimbabwe. I'm the certified gender equality change maker and also a climate justice activist. Currently working with an organization called Women and Land in Zimbabwe as the food security and livelihoods officer. Professionally, I'm also a development practitioner and also a rural development practitioner.
Right.
Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for finding time to be a part of to this session. I know you're super busy, but again, to this session, we'll be shining the light on the great work you've been doing. So maybe to kickstart with, I would like you to share with us what was your motivation? What is it that inspired you to get into the work that seeks to prevent and respond to gender-based violence?
Okay, thank you very much. What I can simply say is my inspiration comes from my own lived experiences, where I grew up in a rural community where patriarchy shaped almost every part of life. You know, I grew up in a rural community where girls used to drop out from schools because the parents preferred to educate boy children, and women being denied also ownership of land simply because they were women. And also, many women in my community used to work hard and are still working hard, especially in the fields. You know, in Africa and even in Zimbabwe, women, they spend most of their time in the fields, but they do not have that access, control, and ownership of land. The land titles are in men's name. So in most instances, you know, women could be chased, and in some communities are being chased away, especially when their husbands died, and also leaving them and their children with nowhere to live, and also maybe in a state of destitute. So these injustice that I've witnessed were very painful to watch, and are still painful to watch. That I also realized that most of these challenges rural women face, like in the likes of poverty, early marriages, economic dependence, are all rooted in gender-based violence and inequality. And also in my work with Women and Land in Zimbabwe, which is an organization which gives rural women a voice. Here we work to challenge those structures, the norms that normalize inequality, and to promote justice, inequity, and freedom from violence, especially to the rural women communities that we work with. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is powerful. This is it, and it's unfortunate that harmful traditional practices aside, somewhat cut across Africa. I don't know about other continents, right? I mean, the continent of Africa, from my experience, um, has those traces. But again, this is something that inspired you, and it's interesting to see that you've been part of the solution to this practices, right? So would you like to share with us what is it that you've been doing so far in this regard? What have you been doing so far to combat these practices of gender-based violence in your country, or say in your project communities or areas?
Okay. Thank you very much. So, as women in land in Zimbabwe, we've been doing quite a lot of work. Like I highlighted earlier on, that we have also noticed that the gender-based violence in our communities comes from deprivation of economic resources. And land is one of the most means of production, especially in Africa. So what we've been doing so far as women in land, of course, we've been doing community awareness raising on gender-based violence. We hold village community meetings, radio programs, where we also educate people about different forms of gender-based violence, not just physical. You know, most of the people, they think that only physical gender-based violence is what they call gender-based violence. But we know we do have a variety or different types of gender-based violence, which also include sexual, economic abuse, emotional, not only physical violence. So we have also noticed that we cannot end or advocate for the end of gender-based violence with women alone. So what we do as well, we do male engagement sessions.
Right.
For instance, in the communities that we work with, we hold dialogues where men shared also their own reflections about power, respect, and responsibilities. So many of them, they even confessed, or they are confessing, that they had never realized how denying their wives of land and income was a form of violence. You know, that was an interesting thing, that they did not even know that denying their women having title deeds, joining cooperatives was a form of violence. So that was also another initiative that we were doing and were still doing, to engage women, to engage boys, so that they may be able to respect women and also to be champions of ending gender-based violence. And also, we've also noticed that most of the rural communities that we work with, women, they are deprived, especially on the being included in the decision-making processes. For example,
Right.
we're talking about climate issues, we're talking about land governance structures, we're talking about community structures. Women, they lack those access to leadership positions. So what we do as women in land as well, we train them on leadership and their rights to land and human rights in general. In that way, we are trying to build women's confidence to speak and demand inclusion. And in some communities, women are now part of the land committees. That's what we're also advocating for, in which we know that these are vital means of production, especially in Africa, and maybe you can say globally, because everything comes from land. So it's pointless to toil every day without any control access to land. The field that you toil every day, you should also gain from it. And also, like I also indicated, not only the land committees, but we do have a variety of types of committees in the communities. We do have the disaster risk management committees, where we are saying women that are in the front line, especially as victims of climate change. But we cannot say anything or decide anything without them. Thereby, they should be at the center of that climate discussions and committees. And we know that these land committees, village committees, there are spaces which were predominantly previously dominated by men. So as women in land as well, of course, we've also realized that I mentioned different types of violence, the physical, the emotional. We
Mhm.
also there to educate women on what we call the referral pathways. That is simply to say, where do they go when they face such type of abuse? How do they take up their cases? Who to approach? So we work with the different service providers. Here in Zimbabwe, we do have what we call victory friendly units. We also have social welfare officers. We also have legal aid practitioners to ensure survivors also know where to go for help. And like also I indicated earlier on that economic abuse is deprivation of women on the issue of having access to economic resources. So we integrate the economic empowerment part, helping women to access land, to form cooperatives, to manage small enterprises, because we believe that when women are economically independent, they are less vulnerable to abuse.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, that's powerful. That's powerful because I'm really looking at how far, I mean, you've gone into the community and how much change you would already have recorded by now, because this used to be these are areas that are strongly rooted in patriarchy, right? And maybe not just patriarchy alone, but gets to right into, country policies as well. You look at bank, you were looking at the economic angle of it. And I was asking myself how this deprivation does not just end at that level. Because when women go to the bank to get loans, to say credit, many times they ask them for collaterals.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
yeah, when they do not have this land, it becomes very difficult for them to acquire this these loans, which can enable them to invest in other economic ventures. So
Yeah.
in Zimbabwe, do you think there are some banks or microfinances that allow women, or are there any schemes that are put in place to allow women to get credit? Or has your work really gone to that level that sensitizes microfinances on how to challenge these gender norms that are likely to stand on the way of women as they seek microcredits?
Yeah, sure, Nange. Thank you very much. So in Zimbabwe, we do have, through the initiative, through the advocacy from civil society organization to the government, we now have what we call Women's Microfinance Bank. This bank is specifically for the women. So what they do is, of course, it was established for the sake of doing away with all these barriers that affect women, especially when trying to access finance and maybe credit and loans for their projects. So there are different products that they do have, and most of them are specifically or tailor-made to suit our rural women farmers. So in terms of having a collateral, we encourage to get as a requirement to work for the women to work as groups, so that they co-guarantor each other rather than required to have someone with maybe a house, a car, or something that they should also present to get loan. But in groups, they co-guarantee each other. So the group concept, through our initiatives, through the work that we do, and also the experiences that we have as civil society organizations, specifically Women in Land, I think is working. Though a bank is a bank, there are a lot of things that sometimes also still deprive other people to have access to that. But not only that, of course, these are the banks and other micro finance institutions which have products that are gender sensitive, that make sure that they suit the women. But in our case, as well as Women in Land, and maybe I can simply say in partnership with other civil society organizations, we also encourage women to start their own business, and also to do what we call ISAs, that is internal lendings and savings, internal savings and lendings, where they, I don't know what you call it in Cameroon, maybe some they call it the village savings. So as
Mhm.
groups, they put together their monies, it gains interest and whatever. So it also is a basis for them to access loan. Of recent, now we do have also women that are doing some dairy projects in one of our communities in Midlands Province. Through that initiative, with the purely kept records, everything in order. Now, a lot of banks and financial institutions, they would want now to partner because they know, one, record keeping is in place. Financial literacy and management will also train them. So we do have other partners and financial institutions and the banks that have those gender lenses, and that also have those products that are gender sensitive, with which our rural women can access credits and loans with very minimum interest. Yeah,
Mm.
as a way
That's
of
that's a
intervention.
yeah, yeah. That's a lot of meaningful work being done there because I mean targeting rural women, I mean getting them into groups, get them to have that strength, that
Yeah,
voice, and even the marketing power because that's almost like a cooperative for women, and I guess they get to stand in to support one another. So I mean, just before we move on to another question, I wanted to find out with you from your observation. Do you think if a woman owns land, is she able to go to the bank and get loans without having a male relative standing by her?
sorry, may you please come again?
Yeah. Okay, so just for a little bit of context, in the Cameroonian context, some years ago,
Yeah,
um, even if a woman has land, right,
yes,
you still need either your husband or you need a male relative from your family coming to the
yeah,
bank with you to guarantee, even if you have that land, to guarantee that you're going to be paying. If you're married, the husband needs to visa that actually you're getting this loan with his consent. So
yeah.
historically, have you had a similar thing in Zimbabwe?
Yes, historically, that was the norm, and it's still the norm, though we are trying to break those barriers. Yeah, in generally, like we do have different land tenure systems in Zimbabwe. We do have under the Communal Land Act, which is being governed by our traditional leaders. Of course, the women, the land belongs to men and being governed by men. And you, as a husband, as a woman, I mean, it's not that allowed to have that land because you are just a woman. And especially when you are not married, yeah, there's no way. You need to be married first for you to access land. That's the traditional setup of land ownership. But as women in land with other organizations, we are fighting to break that barrier. And also in Zimbabwe, remember, we did what we call land reform program, where we did land redistribution. Yet, in the land redistribution, we also noticed that a very limited percentage, maybe less than 20% of women, accessed that land in their own names. But if a critical analysis on who owns land under that, you find that some are widows, some are single moms, and maybe with higher authorities. So we can simply say that even now, the land issue access by women is still a serious issue. But however, we are fighting that even in the land ownership, we are trying that on those title deeds, if you are married as a woman, please put your name there, the joint ownership of land, like it's written Bridget and his husband, not only the husband. It is also a safeguarding initiative in future,
Mm.
because like in the communities that you work with, we are noticing that a lot of women tend to lose the land which used to be their husband's because he has died. The male relatives, they chase you away and everything. So these are some of the initiatives that we. But if you have that piece of land which is solely belongs to you, yeah, as a woman, You don't need a male if you have everything else if you have everything to go to the bank and secure a land, because we do have some lands that you can purchase and then have your own title deeds. If you have that capacity as a woman, having my own plot, it's okay. I can go to the bank. I don't need a male. So that's what we are fighting, especially on different land tenure systems that we have in Zimbabwe. But I believe that when I have my own piece of land as a woman with my title deeds, I should independently go to the bank and access my loans freely without somebody to accompany me. Why should I
Right.
be accompanied? Yeah.
Exactly
Okay.
the question. That's exactly the question. You know, just for fun, I came across a meme. Maybe not a meme. No, this one wasn't a meme actually. It was a Nigerian lawyer
Okay.
who she's called a celebrity lawyer. She says she was saying something very very serious around lands, and she was saying that, for example, if you're married to your husband and you both acquire a piece of land or asset,
Yes.
and you're doing documentation for that asset,
Yes.
avoid lawyers or say officials writing there. Let's say it's Bridget getting married to Paul. You shouldn't write there Mr. Paul and Mrs. Paul, because everybody can be Mrs. Paul. So preferably if his name is written Mr. Paul, it should be said Mr. Paul and Miss Bridget. Don't say, because you know these are some things which a lot of women have been very ignorant about for a very, very
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if he passes on, God forbid that happens, and he gets to court, or say he gets to court, people are going to say, "Oh, he had a wife this way. Oh, he had a wife," but you're the person in that marriage who has been suffering
Yeah.
with the kid. And clearly, your name is not on that title deed. It's not on it. So you can't even claim if that land belongs to you. Who is Mr. Paul? Actually, who is
Yeah.
Mrs. Paul? It becomes
Y-
very difficult to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Nangi. There are some of the things that we usually take for granted. Why should they put Mrs. So and so? I do have a name. My husband does have a name. They should put maybe Alexio so wife Bridget Masikati, my full name. Because Miss and Mrs, there might be some Mrs. Pause, a lot of them, and they come on the day, they come on the day. And some would have uh, a lot of things to exhibit and proof that for real they were missupposed. So
Yes.
we need to to be strong enough and to be aware of those little things that can cost us in future. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I also like the fact that you highlighted that um you highlighted that many times women have access to this, just men rather, traditionally or customarily, just men are entitled according to this land act at community level to have access to those lands. And I think this happens a lot in different African communities. I remember
Yes.
that when we were in school, a lecturer of ours talked um, about how back in the days, even if you were to have a piece of land in the community and you were divorced, or say you were widowed, it is your son. Your son can have that land in his name, but not you, right? So these are some of those practices we are talking about.
Yeah.
And this takes me now to my next question in terms of inheritance. Is it okay if a man is married, for example, and had just female children? Inheritance in my country, for example, back in the days, used to be a thing of just men inheriting landed property, housing, and all of those. But this has shifted with time. It's still shifting with time. So in the Zimbabwean context, are women allowed to inherit property, including land and housing, from your parents?
Yes, but we are still fighting patriarchy. It's not
Right.
happening everywhere. That is what we are trying and fighting to break those barriers. Customarily or traditionally or historically, women were not allowed to access land. Like I highlighted that I grew up in a rural community where women were not allowed to access land. In a household, already, let's say you have your siblings, and maybe you have your brother and your father could simply say, my son, this is where you are going to build your house with your family and whatever, and no mention of me as a girl. So with that assumption that I'm going to be married somewhere, that's where I'm going to get my land. But is it always the case? So we find that in most cases, I always tell people that at the end of the day, we as women, if we do not fight these things, we end up having no place where we call ours. Why? Because at my own father's place, the assumption is I'm going to be married somewhere where I'm going to access land. Let's say that marriage has failed there. Still, they say go back to your father's place. There, my husband has got that title and ownership of land, not me. At my father's place, I do not have as well. So where is my place?
Right.
That's the question. So that's what we are trying to fight. And for those who have generally through our advocacy, it is allowed. If if my father have got a land and everything, yes, he can. But custom, it depends on how well does he understand the current of times. Yeah. But
Right.
customarily and history, I think it's always the same in Africa. That is what you are trying to fight against. And yes, we do have a lot and quite a number of fathers who have also given inheritance to their uh, girl children, the land, the stands, the houses, and everything.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah. You see, it's just saddening because I really like that you've been able to establish the link between access to land and economic aspect of gender-based violence,
Yeah.
because women having just usufruct rights um, to land also means that you cannot decide when and what to cultivate on a piece of land because it's just given to you. You don't have control over the land. So, if I understand the work you're doing, you're ensuring that women do not just have access to land, but are
Yeah.
able to have control over that
Control and
land
ownership. And
and
ownership, yeah.
ownership of those lands, which is a big move, which is a big push, right? So, I mean, who are your targets? I know you've talked a lot about women and also having men in those conversations, but away from this, who else do you meet as you journey towards getting women to that point where they have access, control, and ownership over lands?
Yeah, so like I highlighted earlier on that our main target is the rural women and girls. And we do have different categories under the rural women and girls. Of course, we do have small water farmers under the rural women. We do have widows and single moms who are also victims and subjected to gender-based violence in various forms. Of course, young women and girls, they're among that. And above all, maybe the women-headed households as well. They're also part of. And as I mentioned also earlier on, that we also engage women and boys, since we also believe that GBV cannot be ended by women alone. And more to that, we also collaborate with traditional leaders, the local authorities, and different service providers, like I highlighted earlier on, to make sure that This gender justice is part of local governance, and also community planning. So we do engage and collaborate with different people for us to push our um, our goal. Yeah.
Right. Right. I mean, that's super, super interesting. That's good to go because I like the fact that you were. It's also interesting to find out that you're engaging the traditional leaders because already these are the custodians of those
Yes.
customary laws, and working with them is definitely going to yield a lot of fruits. And I like that you're bringing in men as allies in this whole fight. They are part of the journey, and what you shared earlier on, saying that a lot of men confessing that they didn't know that depriving women um, control and ownership over this land is, it's a GBV tie. It's a form of abuse. Now that takes me, you've done a lot of work, like you clearly highlighted, in all of this, do you have like a striking success story that you'd want to share, like a result that you've observed or recorded as a result of your intervention over time?
Yes, I think we've recorded quite a number of success. And you know what? This it is a process. It is a
Exactly.
process, but I think one, through the trainings and community awareness raising, I think we would also want to acknowledge that we now have women who once feared speaking in public, who are now leading like those committees that I once mentioned, leading the advocacy groups, demanding inclusion and also land distribution. And also as women in land, through the trainings, through the awareness raising, we now have women who have also managed to acquire land for their agricultural projects. Maybe I can simply count in different areas that more than 80 hectares of land that women have managed to acquire as groups, not counting the
Mhm.
individuals. And
Yeah.
also, um, yeah, of course, the male engagement part, we are also witnessing like a shift in mindset, where we now have also maybe some men started sharing their family incomes, decision making,
Mm.
land management with their spouses, a thing that was not happening before. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so even there's this one farmer who also once testified that his household income, yeah, improved after he started working jointly with his wife. This might, we can take this for granted, but it's a huge milestone.
For
And
real, for
also,
real.
yeah, and also economically, yeah, of course they've acquired land, but through the support from our funding partners and with us women in land, on those land we also managed to establish what we call nutritional gardens, just to empower women economically. So the solar powered irrigation schemes that we've also established in the communities, in a way to help women to start small business and to address those issues of economic abuse. We have created them as what we call green hubs. A lot of activities are being done there. So we do have value addition being done there, crop production, seed production, agroecology, doing being the and when they meet, we feel that the women is a safe space for them, sharing ideas, learning from each other, counseling, and maybe far away from abuse. So when they're working together, having income from the gardens, teaching each other value addition, we have seen a lot of people who have greatly changed with these initiatives, and a
Mm.
huge decrease, especially in GBV. Because I once highlighted that another source of gender-based violence is coming from poverty. and lack of
True.
income. Now they do have
Mm-hmm.
gardens, value addition centers where they spend most of their time doing those projects, teaching each other, confidence building, marketing, entrepreneurship, quite a lot. So for us, it's a milestone. And themselves, they are also witnessing and also testifying that this was a good initiative, not and running away from that dependency syndrome, maybe from their husband. So these are some of our biggest successes. And especially, let me continue to emphasize the issue of mindset shift,
Yeah.
because we believe that when women begin to believe they deserve equality, themselves they deserve equality, and when communities started to treat GBV as unacceptable, not as normal, it is a milestone. So these
Yeah.
are some of the things that we can safely and take pride through our
Mm-hmm.
initiatives. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Among others that I have already highlighted earlier on.
This is a lot of work you're putting in there, Bridget. I mean, it's not easy because this is you coming face to face with cultural norms that have been there years for decades and decades. And
Yes,
sometimes, even when you talk about this to women, they find it like, why are you trying to, change
yes,
what's
yes.
been there for a long time? We're used to this.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
makes me want to ask, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced in this fight? Because you're touching on a very delicate angle. Like, you're trying to change stuff that have been there for years, and these are some things which some people do not find normal, right? So as an organization and as an individual working with in this area of work for a very long time, what are some of the challenges that you've been faced with, and how do you overcome these challenges?
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I think the other, some of the measures I think I've highlighted on during my presentation earlier on. But what I can simply say that is, let me start by saying it is a process.
Yes.
A mind shift to change, it is a process, because the deep-rooted cultural norms, they continue to justify male control, to justify male dominance in all spheres. So in some areas, we do have community leaders who are still hesitant to support women's land ownership. Like I highlighted on, land is a source of power in an African context, a means of production. It defines power, manhood, you know. So since we're still fighting patriarchy, we cannot run away from the fact that those deep-rooted cultural norms, they do still resist, they do still exist, and fighting and breaking those barriers is a process, though we're trying. And also, in the communities, I've mentioned the communities that we work with, but believe me that we are not everywhere in Zimbabwe. So, which means that we also, the issue of funding, it also restricts how much ground can we cover as an organization, because most of the rural communities that are still experiences remain unreached. It
Right.
is a challenge. And also, um, like I also mentioned, that we do have different types of abuse, the economic abuse, etc. But even the survivors,
Mm-hmm.
they fear reporting the abuse.
Yeah.
So sometimes we sometimes we don't know, like, the intensity of some of the cases in different communities, because there are some cases that are not being reported because of stigma, or maybe lack of confidentiality. And we do have perpetrators, some of them who are economically independent, strong, that you cannot do anything. when they
Mm.
abuse you. So those sorts of things remain a challenge, I can simply say. And more to that, like I also highlighted on, if you find that poverty and the inequalities and whatever, some of them, they are being perpetuated by the climate shocks. So climate change itself, in as much as we're saying land issues, economic, what, but the climate shocks is also a challenge that worsen, or maybe kind of like they're also kind of like maybe slowing the process,
Mhm.
because when we talk about droughts, floods, these things, they also worsen the vulnerability of women. When crop fails, tension rise in the households, often triggers
Mhm.
more violence against women, rivers
Yeah.
drying up, walking long distance, fetching some water and looking for food, thereby being exposed to different type of risks, sexual assaults on the way, rape cases, etc. So I think that's what some of the challenges that I can say boldly, that we are still facing, despite the efforts all that we are doing as an organization and as individuals. But what I can simply say is, despite all these barriers, yeah, we remain committed to
Right.
creating safe space, especially for the women and girls, so that they can also speak, learn, and also lead the change.
Right. Right. So, I mean, it's sad that you're faced with this, but also on the other hand, it's just interesting that regardless of the difficulties and challenges, you still keep pushing very, very hard. So, I just have another question as a follow-up to that. Do you think you've gotten to that point where traditional leaders are able to advocate as to why more women need to get more land? I know you've been working in collaboration with them a lot, but in terms of sustainability, are you looking at, do you think you've gotten to that point where without you, a traditional leader at community level can rise up to fight on behalf of a woman to own, control land?
Thank you very much. I can safely say yes, especially in the communities that we have worked and the communities that we are working with. Remember, I highlighted that we collaborate with the traditional leaders, we collaborate with service providers. So even when we advocate for women's access to land, let's say you want to do an irrigation scheme for women, so what we can simply do is we train and educate women to do the processes, engage their own local leaders, give them land, and then they do their project. Now the results, they are happy, because it's not only for the women, but all the communities that are benefiting from those initiatives. So for all the traditional leaders that we are working with, I can safely say that, of course, we cannot say 100%, because
Yeah.
that patriarchy traits are still living within us. But for now, I can simply say, due to the lived experience, the land that we've managed to acquire as women, themselves with their own land title deed, as a group, as individual, I can say that yes, they've seen and witnessed, and they are ready to go on and also give women land when it's possible. Of course, land is an infinite resource. It cannot be stretched, but whenever it's necessary, for all the community leaders and traditional leaders whom we've worked with, it wasn't that a challenge, because what starts usually is awareness raising. What is the
Yeah.
impact? How beneficial is that land? How important is women? Because they also suffer from, because some of the cases of GBV are being reported. to them as traditional leaders, in communities.
True.
So
Yeah.
where they also realize that the poverty contributes, lack of income contributes. So now they do have a garden, they do have this project that they're doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
they
That's
are
nice.
they are testifying. Yeah.
That's
But
nice.
let us not rule out that it is a process, and in some communities that we haven't reached, yeah, the situation is still like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you've recorded this level of success already,
Mm.
this project is worth being, scaled up. It's
Yeah,
worth being scaled up in different regions, in different communities. It's worth it because um I conducted my research on the role of women along Irish potato agricultural value chains. And some key things I got from those findings were that women own, even for a fewer proportion of women owned lands to their names. And
yes,
even among those who own lands, they were unmarried, which
yeah,
therefore
yeah,
means that they were able to decide on what to do with their money, where to buy the land, and what proportion of land to buy.
yeah,
Now, even when they owned land, even those who were married didn't own land on their own. They used usufruct rights. They got lands and used those lands because their husband says, I own this land, so cultivate your Irish potato on this proportion. So this made it very difficult for them to do rotatory farming, and they keep using the same piece of land over and over and over again and not allowing
yeah,
it for time to fallow. And even when they want to allow it to fallow, it means they need to cultivate another crop like garlic. They need to
yeah,
cultivate maybe cabbage or carrot on that piece of land for it to fallow, and then allow for time for they to come back maybe a couple of months or a year after to still cultivate Irish potato on that particular piece of land. Consequently, their output can't even be much. It can't even be bigger. They can't even make profits, especially during seasons where they're experienced with bad harvests, like you mentioned, the intersection between crop production and climate change. And many of them get loans. And I remember one saying that when she's unable to make big sales, it becomes very difficult for her to repay the loans she got. And you also said something that was very crucial, very important about training these women on how to save up, on how to do bookkeeping, on how
yeah,
to get their
yeah,
funds. I
yeah,
remember asking these women, can you tell me how much profit you make every season?
yeah,
It became very difficult for them to tell me what are the levels of profits they make per season. And the question is why? And their feedback was, if I'm able to pay back the loan I got before cultivating during the season, and I am able to pay the school fees of my children, that is enough. I do not really get it. Then you discover that, like you work in a rural area, education becomes a bigger thing because they too
yeah,
can't even
yeah,
document what did I
yeah,
get. But it is interesting that you come in into that sector to say that you should be able to save up, even if you can't track, you should be able to save so that at the end
yeah,
of the day, you're able to, get money to meet up your other needs. And I like how you said when women are economically empowered, they are also able to sustain the household needs. They're able to complement their partners, and when they're
yeah.
able to complement their partners, the chances of intimate partner violence also get lessened.
Is
The
yeah,
burden
yeah,
on
yeah,
men
yeah,
as well gets lessened. And this is the level of empowerment we want women to get to the level where they can complement their partners. They can support their partners. So I think this is much of the work you're doing, and it's not just saving women, it's not just supporting women, it is about creating sustainable communities, stronger and
yeah.
better futures for women as well, which is a very good thing, giving women that agency. That's very great. Now you're heading for COP. What are you taking to COP in Brazil this year? What would you want to share to them? And what do you think you will be bringing back?
Okay, thank you very much. So, like, climate change is now a topical issue, and we as rural women, we are the very people who are affected most by this climate change. But I have mentioned the issue of being included in decision-making processes. So what you are saying is those type of forums, they're for the big people. They're for the big people. And it's difficult to see a rural woman saying or sharing her experience of climate in that in-house where the negotiations are being done. Okay. So what you are simply saying is, given the opportunity to be in that platform, we are also going to raise the rural women's voice for us to be heard. And let us be at the center of climate discussions. As well, all the solutions proposed, let them be women-led or community-led, because we are the very people who are affected, not
Mm.
being imposed. And we also need clarity, and also to march against what they call real solutions when they are forced solutions to us, when they do not work for us. There are a lot of things that are being said, the just energy transition, the what. But our question is, as rural women, why are we still using firewood? Why are we still using, when you're mining for lithium batteries, for what, for just energy? Where are we? Is it not history repeating itself, where we are continuously suffering displacements, victims, gender-based violence in all the areas where you are saying these are the initiatives for a just transition, for climate solution? We should be beneficiaries of some of the initiatives and not victims as rural women, because everything is being done in the rural areas. Mining for lithium is being, and what are we gaining from that? Is assaults, is GBV, displacement, and a lot of violence. So ours is also to also raise our demands, to present our demands, what we want as rural women in those platforms. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, super, super. That's powerful. I mean, you've raised so many concerns. And I remember there is often this phrase, nothing for women without women.
Without women,
And
yeah.
I like the fact that you're bringing in the intersectional angle to say that let's just not say that women are being involved, but also bring in um, that place of the geographical location angle of things, the piece of geographical location piece of things, like to say we are not just saying women, we are looking at rural women in this case. Can we bring them on board? Can we hear their voices? Can we look at
Yes.
how we can capacitate them? Because not just capacitate them, but also leverage what they bring in, right? Because people are fond of, people look at women just like recipients of change. But just like
Yeah. Yeah.
yourself, you are an activist. You're doing a lot at the level of the field. So, what can they learn from you? What can you put on on those discussion tables? Can they learn from your experiences? So this is something great. As a rural woman, you still have a lot to support, and I think that
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of initiatives around in our climate change will be solved by the time we are able to leverage indigenous knowledge, which many more women have implemented over time, which are still environmental friendly. So until those resources are tapped, they will remain an untapped resource, and we look forward to, you know, a time or a moment where this changes really come about. So wrapping it up all, I just wanted to ask again, what will you want to tell people listening to you from home right now? What do you want to tell that survivor of gender-based violence? What do you want to tell policymakers who might be listening to you right now?
Okay, thank you very much, Nangi. So, to every survivor out there listening to me today, I'm saying you are not alone and it is not your fault. You have the right to safety, you have the right to dignity, you have the right to justice. And please, please, please seek help. We do have community support structures. We do have also organizations that also are ready to help. And there are also people ready to stand with you. Don't be shy. Please report the cases, especially for the survivors out there. And also to the general public listening to me, I want to say, ending gender-based violence, it starts with us all. And let us challenge those norms and harmful practices in our homes, in our communities, at workplaces, at various institutions. And more to that, we do have boy children. Let us also raise our boy children to respect women and also to create safe spaces where the girls can also dream freely. Because in our organization, like Women in Land, we also believe that when women have access to land, when women have access to resources, to equal rights, the whole community, it thrives. And equality is not just about fairness, it's about building stronger and peaceful and more resilient societies. And also for the policymakers, let us help each other to enforce the implementation of the policies that support and end gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was solid. That was a solid call to action. So before we wrap it up all, do you have any final words before we call it over?
I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity. Together we can. It is a process, but let us remain committed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
I like
much.
You're welcome. I mean, I should be thanking you too for making it today. And I like that you keep hitting on the fact that it is progress. And no matter how much challenges we have, we need to keep forging ahead. So, once again, thank you so much. And to you listening to us today, thank you very much for following through. Marita Nankang is my name, and you've been listening to An Hour with Nangla, where we share with you experiences of activists who are working so hard towards eliminating or preventing gender-based violence in their communities and in their countries. Thank you once again, Bridget, for coming on today. And we look forward to meeting you again in the nearest future. Thank you so much, and thanks for following through.
Thank you, Marita. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye.